Welcome to Love Spells Podcast. I'm Love Spells, hoodoo practitioner and conjuror of root work, diviner and tarot, light worker, spiritual healer, and advisor, but most of all, I'm brought to you here directly by my ancestors and guides. Up in here, we're going to be mixing up a little potion of love, life, and liberation. Ingredients includes, but is not limited to, a handful of black spirituality, a dash of mental health issues and how to heal from them, sprinkling in a little bit of black history with a dollop of getting to know thyself. We're going to be stirring up the pot on all things black, and this brew is lit and on the fire. So, as we go through this learning journey together, let's set our intentions to awaken the oppressed, address, and digress. Let's talk about it. More people would learn from their mistakes if they weren't so busy denying them. Harold J. Smith. Denial is the lie that we tell others, but not for them to actually believe us. It's actually a coping mechanism that we use in order to cover up our lack of motivation, our missed opportunities, and failures. Denial is the lie that we tell others, but it's the delusion that we try to feed ourselves. On this episode, we're going to explore what is denial, why do we use it, and how would it be if we actually told ourselves the truth? This episode is called Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire. And let's talk about it. People will be in denial about anything and everything. It just depends on how it, makes them feel internally or how it represents them externally. People will be in denial about the texture of their hair, what size shoe they wear. I remember I had a friend who she only purchased tennis shoes, and the moment she thought that she wore the men's size in shoes, period. And when she went to go purchase a pair of female sandals and realized she was 2.5, 3 times the size, she was devastated and insisted that the store was the one that was in the wrong and that they were making the sizes wrong. But she was obviously in denial and had never purchased shoes in her actual feminine size. But anyhow, people will be in denial about where they live, what's their financial status, what's their intellectual status. People will be in denial about what is their league, where, what they've done in their life, their accomplishments, what their diet is like and why they're overweight or why their health is bad. People will be in denial about whatever suits them because facing their actual behavior, choices, and decisions in life is much harder than finding a outside source to blame their situations on. Denial is literally a delusion, a self-created delusion in order to pacify and justify one's actions or the lack thereof. Behaviors that bring shame or embarrassment, where you have to actually own up to your behavior and be possibly judged or ridiculed, those type of behaviors will automatically trigger a protection. Do something in order to save yourself from the embarrassment you're about to receive. Do something to stop people from judging you or deciding who you are based on what you did. That's what your mind does. It sends out a save yourself, alarm. And the first thing that will come up is the wanting to deny. Now, some people will do it straight out, like lying. No, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. This is not a form of denial because they're very aware that they did do that, but they don't want to actually deal with the shame. They don't want to actually be ridiculed. So the first reaction is to lie. Denial is the same thing, except it's with a twist because when you lie, if you get caught in that lie, it just compounds the shame that you originally were going to feel. So when someone is in a case of denial, instead of actually lying, their reaction is to explain. Give a valid explanation that absolves you of responsibility for whatever actions took place or whatever decision that you made or whatever lack of movement that you made. So a person will create a explanation, a scenario, or something that might be quite valid or something that you can validate in some way, shape, or form. But usually it's not really validating because it usually is for their circumstance only. And for the thing about a denial, or being in denial really, is that when you tell the story, it only applies to your specific circumstance, because although the situation that the person is going through is the same situation as many others, no one's done anything under the sun that somebody else has not already done. No one has not done anything under the sun that somebody else has not done. You know what I'm saying? But when you give an explanation for why yours was special and had the circumstance in it that way because you were special and certain things didn't go right, and that's why, it brings about this idea that, you have to believe me rather than the natural way of things. So for example, I'll give you an example. I am overweight, right? And I can say that dieting and exercise, or eating healthy rather, I won't say dieting because dieting helps you short term, but eating a healthier diet and regular exercise will make me lose weight, right? Now, someone who knows that this is the case. Now, everybody knows this. This is not some, new information that anyone just received, but everyone knows this. It's been proven. So the thing is, the person who lacks the motivation to change their diet and do the exercise, who is in denial, because there are certain people that I just don't want to. That's fine. That's okay. But the person who feels guilty, remember, I'm talking about a circumstance where the embarrassment or, the guilt is driving the denial. A person who feels guilty for not having the motivation in order to change their diet and exercise, although they full well know that they need to, will give you I have a medical condition that no matter how much I don't eat or no matter how much workout I do, I will never lose any weight, i.e. making a specific circumstance that is only for them, that makes their lack of, triumph over their weight journey a circumstance that is out of their control now. Therefore, anything they do is going to lead to failure. Therefore, they're absolved of all of their choices. Now, the truth about it is that the person who is stating this is not convincing the other person they're talking to that is the reason why they're not losing weight. Because the other person that they're talking to, if they have any common sense, knows better. There's been no proven medical condition that dieting or eating healthy and exercise has not triumphed over. And everyone knows that. But the person who is giving the excuse of denial is trying to create an illusion that justifies themselves so they can absolve themselves of the guilt, so that they don't have to feel bad for themselves. And that little voice in their head doesn't come out and say, now, you're just being lazy. Now, you should have been got on this. They want to avoid that at all costs. And that is what denial is. That is what denial does. And people do this from small things to the extreme. People can be in denial about little things like, changing your diet is one of them. Changing things in your life, going to school, or, starting that new business, or whatever the case may be. And a lot of it is also wrapped into fear as well. People fear change, so they will create some kind of story for why that wouldn't have worked out for them. The truth of the matter is, people will deny whatever they can in order to absolve themselves of their behaviors, absolve themselves of feeling guilty about their behaviors, doing crappy things to themselves and others, and finding some way to justify it, make it okay, or flat out ignore the horrible feeling they have about doing it, for not doing things for yourselves, not loving and caring for yourselves in an appropriate manner, and feeling guilty about it, and trying to avoid that guilt by creating some scenario that makes it okay or makes it validated, for your lack of motivation and lack of drive. These are the reasons that people go down the slippery slope of denial, slide down that slide of, looking for something else to validate, justify, and give an understanding to something. But truthfully, it's just an illusion created by the person themselves in order to convince themselves, because they know fully well that they're not convincing anybody else. And anybody else being convinced of their denial doesn't really truly matter. As long as you are unable to pass judgment that they can feel outright, or cause them any extra guilt that they don't already have for themselves. The problem with denial is that there's a long-term effect that can be had on a person who practices living an illusion for any elongated period of time, or when they do it so often that it becomes their own reality. And people who consistently live in a case of denial create this fictitious idea, or they create a whole avatar of themselves. Really, this is what it is. It's a person who is unaccomplished, maybe. I'll give that as an example. Someone who aspires to be someone great, for example. Maybe this person wants to be a musician. I'm using that for example because I've met plenty of people who live in this case of delusion that are musicians, or aspiring musicians, right? So this person wants to be a musician, and they lack the motivation to actually get out there and get it done, whatever that constitutes. Or they lack the motivation, or they lack not even just the motivation, but they lack the confidence level that it takes in order for them to push themselves forward and put themselves out there in a manner that's going to get them even close to what they want. And so what do? They create a narrative that states like, you talk about it on a regular basis about what you want to do. Oh, I want to be this, mogul or whatever. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I'm gonna get a gun because you're a gunner. Okay? You know what I'm saying? And when called upon it, when asked, what are you working towards? Well, how far have you gotten? Well, what have you been doing? Have you made? That's when the stutter box comes in, and the denial. Because now the illusion is up for question. Now the storyline, now the guilt has set in. Because everybody can be great, in fantasy. I'm a thin fashion model in fantasy. But in real life, in order for me to get to that point, I would have to drop a certain amount of pounds. I would have to go and, get my headshots done. I would have to go take them to, those are those steps. And when you talk to someone who is in denial about who they really are, what they're really doing in life, where they're really headed, what they've accomplished or their lack thereof of accomplishment or motivation, what you'll get is an excuse that justifies their lack of action. So the long-term effect of this is that you eventually make up so many stories and you use those instead of actual motivation. Now you don't need motivation. You can just live in a state of denial. You're spending so much time creating this narrative and trying to convince yourself and others that you will be on top, that you're not actually working towards being on top. So denial actually creates or helps perpetuate failure. So that safety mechanism that steps in, that says stop yourself from being, judged, stop yourself from feeling this guilt, actually turns into the thing that creates judgment and guilt. Because now you have these people who you have told on numerous occasions that you were going to be this, you were going to do that, you were going to be this, you were going to go here, you were going to be this great person. And as they're waiting, and you've given them excuse after excuse after excuse for your lack of triumph or whatever, and it comes to the forefront that you haven't really tried at all. And you're so wrapped up in trying to convince people that you're going to get there that you really haven't tried at all. And you've created such an illusion for yourself that you're wrapped up in the illusion and not reality. You've gotten nowhere. And guess what? The guilt becomes heavier and the burden becomes heavier to bear. So when people walk this line of denial and or living in it or treating everything as a I gotta hide the guilt, fake the funk, you actually might turn into exactly what you are running from or hiding against or trying to show people that you're not. Denial is one of those things that has absolutely no benefit to you. It doesn't serve a real purpose. It is a cowardly act in order to save yourself from something that you should and will experience regardless if you want to or not. You should feel guilty when not doing what you're supposed to do for yourself. If you are not motivated, then denying why you're not motivated is not going to push you into motivation. The guilt that you feel is necessary. It's necessary in order to change the way you behave. Guilt is telling you that you're doing something wrong. If you never had guilt, then you would never think anything you do was wrong. You would never think that you need to change anything about yourself. And you'll go around harming yourself and others regularly with no remorse or regard. Guilt is an extremely important part of life. But denial serves absolutely no purpose. So what would happen if we didn't deny things? If regularly we experienced guilt, we dealt with people who judged us and made fun of us or made us feel guilty, and we told ourselves the truth no matter what happened, no matter what the problem was, or no matter what we did, man, what kind of world will we live in? Honestly, I think fact-checking yourself would mean that not only would we have more harmonious situations between us and other individuals because we would feel guilty by doing someone else wrong, therefore we would have to tell us the truth that we did another person wrong, and we'd have to cope with why we behaved that way in the first place. If we did not live in cases of denial, and we did not try to hide under a rock every time guilt or our failures shined a light on us, we would be very balanced and well-rounded individuals. Honestly, having lifestyle where you tell yourself the truth will push you or catapult you really into a circumstance where when you have lack of motivation, telling yourself the truth will motivate you. When you have something that you want to accomplish, telling yourself the truth will get you there. Telling yourself the truth, feeling that guilt, pushing yourself through it is the epitome of not only self-care, but it's keeping it 100 on a level like no other. Creating illusions does nothing for you. It's a crutch. It's a way to hide up under a rock from all the things that you need in order to be the best version of yourself. It's a way to deny yourself what you actually deserve. Denial is the ego's way of protecting you. But all it does is hold you hostage and hold you back in the long run. If you're trying to be a better version of yourself, standing in your power is being aware and understanding that you will make many mistakes, that you will do things that may be unbecoming of yourself. You may step out of character at some point in time or do something that you are embarrassed about and don't want people to be knowledgeable of. Standing in your power is knowing that you will do all of those things and that they do not define your character. But being able to triumph over the guilt, embarrassment, and ridicule from them builds character. Denial is a place for cowards. It's where cowards go hide. It's where people who don't want to deal with their emotions, deal with their behavior, or deal with their lack of motivation and lackluster for life. It's a place that people who are on their journey and their path to success and happiness do not live in. Get off the rat wheel. If you started running in the case of denial, stop running that race because there are no winners. Denial is just a river in Egypt. Anything else just makes you a liar. You've been listening to Love Spells Podcast. I am Love Spell, sending you gratitude and appreciation for your listening ear. I've been blessed to have had you as my guest as we stirred up the pot on all this mess. We've awakened the oppressed, addressed. Now it's time to digress. I'll be talking off your ear on the next episode. Bye for now.